Hello, good afternoon. My name is Charles, Professor Charles Brennan, and I am the Dean of the School of Science here at RMIT University in Australia. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about the science degrees available in RMIT. And these programs are world-renowned and allow the students to work across a variety of disciplines to replicate the real-world experience that you will need once you start your careers. And we'll talk a little bit more about the actual courses as we proceed through the slides, and also talk a little bit about employability and experiences. So during this presentation, there are moderators behind the scenes. These moderators are program leaders, the people that will be teaching you when you come to RMIT. And these moderators, they are available to answer any questions that you may have via the chat. So please put questions in the chat so that we can answer them. You won't be able to speak to ask the questions, but please type any questions that you have via the chat function, and we will try to get back to you relatively quickly. But before you actually add a question, have a read through or scroll through all the questions that are already there, because sometimes there's a question that's already been asked and the answer has already been posted. Now, if you feel that that question has been answered, please feel free to give it a thumbs up or something like that, and we will then go and try and tackle some of the other questions that arise. At the end of the presentation, when I stop talking, we will have a question and answer session, and I will try to recap on some of those questions that you pose at the end of the presentation. So I'm really looking forward to this slideshow and also communicating with you. So thank you for joining us today. Next slide, please. Before I start, I would like to give the acknowledgement of country. RMIT University acknowledges the people of the Wurrung and Burrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nation, on whose unceded lands we conduct the business of the university. RMIT University respectfully acknowledges their ancestors and elders past and present. RMIT also acknowledges the traditional custodians and their ancestors of the lands and waters across Australia where we conduct our business. So, next slide, please. RMIT is committed to redefining its relationship in working with and supporting Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander self-determination. The university's goal is to achieve lasting transformation by maturing its values, its culture and policy and structures in a way that embeds reconciliation in everything that we do. In line with the principles of Bundra, we are changing our ways of knowing, of working and being to support sustainable reconciliation and activate the relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous staff, students and community. And we feel that this is something that we should champion and be part of through our educational experiences. Next slide, please. So, why study science at RMIT? A really good question. And something that sort of is obviously very important for you to understand as students, looking at a range of university options, looking at a range of courses, and trying to figure out which is the best university and which is the best university course that you're going to take. Obviously, I'm completely biased as Dean of Science, and I would love you all to come here and study science with us at RMIT. But in the next slides, we'll give you a few examples, and please ask those questions in the chat line. Next slide, please. What we try to do with science here at RMIT is make it as specialised as possible so that you can study biological sciences, environmental science, physics, space science, geospatial science, maths. You can study chemistry, you can study anything that you would like in the scientific discipline. So we tried that specialization, but we tried to make it flexible. So in ways of flexibility, we're trying to get you to be interested in science and be able to translate the theoretical knowledge that you may pick up here at RMIT into applied applications. And that way, if you can do that, there are a whole range of great job outcomes for our graduates. In doing so, we value the role of experiential learning. And what that really means is we value the role of taking you into places, taking you into the field to study, taking you on excursions, going locally or internationally if we can. Obviously, COVID has had an implication with the international travels, but we like to try to have that experiential learning where we go outside of the university so as you can see the relevance of what you're learning and what you're beginning to acquire in terms of the skills. And we also try to connect with industry as much as possible. Now, our equipment and our resources and facilities in Melbourne and Bundoora and elsewhere are purpose-built, and they are actually suitable for industry to come in and use those type of pieces of equipment. But we also try to partner with industry and build connections with industry so that students and staff have accessible provisions to go into industry and work with industry on dynamic learning projects. So that project-based learning is really important for our curriculum and also the development of a range of skills that you will have here. Next slide, please. I will go through a number of the programs that we have, but like I said, behind the screen at the moment, we've got a range of program managers, and all those program managers and also associate deans are applicable to applied science or biotechnology, biological sciences, chemistry, environmental science, food science and technology, geospatial science, mathematics, stats and analytics, nanotechnology, physics and surveying. So if you have a question that's particularly relevant to one of those science programs, put it in the chat and we'll try to answer that as we're going along, or if not, right at the end of the presentation. Thank you. Next slide, please. Now, some of our degrees are split into single degrees or double degrees or majors. Now, with a single degree, you have a dedicated learning environment that you're going to be looking at the Bachelor of Science, for instance, in this case, in applied sciences. So looking at a range of different aspects of science. It could be environment, it could be biological sciences, it could be chemical, inorganic chemistry, biotechnology, those sorts of things. So we study a single degree in Bachelor of Science, Applied Sciences, and then you can major in things. So that's where your preference, that's where your passion will lie, in areas such as biological sciences, applied chemistry, physics, or applied science in general. And you can follow that passion throughout your education here at RMIT by looking at elective courses that you can take or participating in those practical and experiential learning experiences wherever possible. We also have some double degrees. So we value the opportunity not only to learn science, but to learn other things associated with science. So potentially there's a double degree in applied science in Bachelor of Business Management, where you can learn business skills or management skills alongside that science aspect. And that strengthens your curriculum vitae, your CV, when you're going into applying for jobs later on, well, 3 or 4 years down the line, and it goes very fast, don't worry. Or you could have a Bachelor of Science and you could specialise in something like nanotechnology, for instance, which gives you an edge on other students who don't necessarily have that specialisation in nanotechnology. Next slide, please. In biotechnology, we have a single degree that's focused in biotechnology, and that involves everything from fermentation to bioprocessing, to biochemistry, bioeconomical situations. We can also have a double degree with biomedical sciences, and that's quite useful in terms of if you want to keep your options open and potentially go into a nutritional type of option for your career. On top of that, we have what we call an honours graduation. And in there, we have a straight honours or we have a Dean's Scholars. Now, these honours programmes tend to be for students who are interested in doing more research, doing more experiments, and learning a deeper knowledge of that particular science. So, for instance, the Dean Scholar in Biotechnology, you would be going into the laboratory and working alongside some of our Masters and PhD students on projects associated with biotechnology. And at the end of the day, that would mean that you could either continue and do a PhD yourself, and I'm happy to have you as one of our PhD students in 4 years' time, or you can go out to industry and you've got that added value of experience already in terms of research and research applicability. So the Dean Scholar and also those honours years do have value in terms of creating more skills for employability. Next slide, please. In biological sciences, again, we have a straight BSc, Bachelor of Science in Biological Sciences, and we can double that with business management again, or we can have that Dean Scholar or Honours Year award, which develops that research, that experimental type of work in your courses. Next slide, please. In chemistry, we have a range of chemistry programs. Now, the single degree is called Bachelor of Science in Applied Chemistry, and that gives you an understanding of, well, applied chemistry, so inorganic, biological, organic chemistry, biochemistry. It gives you an understanding of the equipment that we use, so you'll be going into the laboratories and using mass spectrometers, and you'll be using HPLCs and GCs and all those sort of fancy pieces of equipment. But you're looking at the molecular structure of chemicals and how those can be applied from a scientific point of view into life, into real life. And that's really important in terms of considering potential double degrees with that in terms of nanotechnology. And nanotechnology is certainly one of the hot areas in science at this moment in time, and looking at nanobubbles or nano-emotions and those sorts of things. Again, you can match that with a bachelor's of business management and have more of that managerial or that business applied sort of nature. Or you can potentially have a link with engineering, and chemical engineers are also very highly sought after in terms of employability. So you have a range of options there to develop skills, not only in applied chemistry and chemistry skills, but other types of aspects. And again, you have the honours in terms of Dean Scholar and also an honours in chemistry itself that will lead on to a career in research potentially if you want to. Next slide, please. In environmental science, we have the Bachelor of Environmental Science, and that focuses on a range of things. So it could be our land, our water, our environment, it could be climate change, it could be sustainability, it could be environmental toxicology, it could be soil science. All those sort of things are really important. You do gain an understanding of biology and chemistry and biotechnology in that, because obviously the chemistry in terms of looking at the chemical constituents of the environment are really important, or biology, looking at the microbiota in soil is really important. So the Bachelor of Environmental Science is a really good program to go into. It gives you an opportunity in terms of also doubling up in terms of engineering, or developing more of that skill with governance and sustainability in a Bachelor of Environment with Society, or that business and that management experience. And once more, you have the opportunity to take an honours year or a Dean Scholar year in terms of developing your strengths in research and application and experimental knowledge. Next slide, please. Food science and technology is something strong to my heart because I am a food science and technology person who dabbles in nutrition. And we have a single degree in Bachelor of Science in Food Technology and Nutrition. And that will give you an idea of how do we make our food, how do we understand the chemical composition of the food and the processing of our food, but also in terms of when we eat our food and the constituents of diets, how do those get broken down into our nutritional well-being and the well-being of the nation. So that's quite applicable in the current situation in Australia and across the world. We have a double degree again with business management, and that allows you to have a little bit more of a flair when you go into the food technology industry, to have some of that management or marketing experience. And we have an honours degree in terms of the Dean Scholar and an honours degree in food science, which again will allow you to become a student, a further student in terms of postgraduate study. Next slide, please. In Geospatial Science, we have a Bachelor of Science Geospatial, which looks at the land in more detail. So we look at satellite, we look at navigation, we look at the landscape in itself, and how we can combine that knowledge into understanding where we are and also what we can do with the land. We also have a Bachelor of Space Science. So beyond the Earth, we can go out and we can look back and see the little Earth and all the other planets in our solar system. And that's in combination with physics, because you would imagine that physics and geospatial science combine to look at space and beyond space as well. And that's a really exciting program if you're interested, and it's one of our growing programs at this moment in time. We have a honours program for that in terms of geospatial science as well, so that you can further your degrees in terms of postgraduate education already. Next slide, please. In that geospatial area, we have a very specific degree in terms of Bachelor of Applied Science in Surveying, and this is one of our accredited degrees, and some of the other degrees that I've been mentioning are also accredited. And here, what you are basically learning is the ability to become a trained surveyor. And that's a profession that is underrepresented at the moment in terms of university students. So it's a good opportunity to actually go into a career that has relatively high employability rankings. And again, you can carry on with your studies in surveying through honours or through postgraduate education if you would like to. Next slide, please. In mathematics, statistics and analytics, we have a single degree in the Bachelor of Science Applied Mathematics and Statistics. As you will understand, that takes you about mathematical principles, teaches you about data analysis, statistical, and gives the opportunity to apply those mathematical skills into data wrangling, into cybersecurity, into other types of avenues that you wouldn't necessarily experience in applied mathematics at school. We have the opportunity again to further those type of things through a master's or a PhD by studying through the Bachelor of Science on the Dean Scholar or the honours year, and then going into postgraduate education. Next slide, please. Nanotechnology is something that I've mentioned before. It's a branch of science which is expanding, and we've got a single degree in the Bachelor of Science Nanotechnology. That really encompasses both physics, chemistry, and also biology, and a little bit of maths in terms of interpretation and data analysis. And it gives us a much more rounder understanding of what we can do in the nano, in the micro type of scale, applying that technology. And it could be nano emotions or nanotechnology in general. And then that can be again fitted up with a double degree in terms of Bachelor of Science Applied Sciences, or with chemistry or physics as a major. Next slide, please. In the physics area, we have a single degree in Bachelor of Science Physics. And we also have that Bachelor of Space Science, which is very attractive to some of the newer students. We can have a double degree with physics and nanotechnology, so we have a Bachelor of Nanotechnology in that double degree. And we can build on whatever your understanding is from the theoretical type of teaching that we have into much more of an applied aspect through that Dean Scholar or that honours year, where you will have much more of a practical experiential learning involved in developing those skills. Next slide, please. So that gives you a rough idea of the different types of science degrees that we have. It's a very quick look through them, and I apologize of the speed. We also have a number of pathways that you can enter into RMIT. So please have a look at the website pathways.rmit.edu.au, because that gives you an idea of the different pathways that you can come to RMIT if you're not coming through a standard pathway. So for instance, these are just two examples, and there are many more examples that you can come to RMIT with, but pathway A, for instance, that you're having an associate degree, which is 2 years, and then you come into the second or partly into the third year of our degree for another 1.5 years, and you come out with a BSc in 3.5 years. For pathway B, where you have a certificate 4, you have a diploma, and then you come into our bachelor's degree in the second year for another 2 years or so. So there's many opportunities to come into the science degrees at RMIT, and we would welcome exploring those opportunities with you as much as possible. Next slide, please. One of the things that we take pride on is the facilities that we have, and RMIT have numerous high-tech purpose-built laboratories, both within the city and outside of the city in a campus called Bandura. And those high-tech purpose-built laboratories are just like mini industry incubator sites. They have a lot of specific technology and equipment that you wouldn't find elsewhere very often. And industry and employers do come in and use that equipment side by side with the students and the staff and the researchers. So for instance, we have in the city campus a microscopy unit that works with Olympus and other types of microscopy type of companies. We have a micro analysis facility, and out in Bandura, we have a food pilot plant that most of our big and also small, medium-sized enterprises, big companies and small, medium-sized enterprise companies actually use in terms of product innovation, product development, or just looking at different processes. And in there, the two pictures that you can see, the tubular one is a pasteurizer, heat exchanger, and the one that looks like an inverted funnel is a spray dryer. And those two technologies are really important in the food industry at this moment in time. Next slide, please. And because we have those high-tech pieces of equipment and laboratories, we have a lot of industry connections. We have a lot of projects whereby students can come and work along real-life projects with industry. And those are embedded to some extent in your core subjects and your electives. But we also have something called simulated work integrated learning, a WIL activity. And these are where industry gives us an activity for a student, or a student goes out into industry placements, for instance, and you learn practical skills, you learn hands-on skills that are really important in terms of employability. Now, these project-based skills with industry and employees enable you to develop softer skills as well as the scientific skills, and to look at your theoretical skills and make sure that you can apply those into real-life examples. And this is a very important aspect in terms of employability. For instance, in the food technology area, we have WIL activity, and about 60 of our students last year took place of WIL activity. 56, 57 of those were offered employment by the industry that they went into before they left RMIT. So you can see how impactful they can be for your career and your future direction. So I would encourage you to take part in as many of those work integrated learning activities and applied research projects as possible, because that really gives you a hands-on experience. Next slide, please. And here are some of our industry partners. So we have Melbourne Water, we have the Australian government, we have a number of government departments in Australia that work with us in terms of allowing industrial placements for our students at undergraduate and also postgraduate level, and also participate in research. We have people like Simplot or Unibank who are looking at cybersecurity, for instance, Lockheed Martin looking at sort of the applications of physics, CSIRO looking at a whole range of different types of research in biological systems. And like I said, many of our students that go out to industry placements with these partners actually end up working for them for the first 1 or 2 or 3 years after their studies at RMIT. So I would encourage you to take part in those type of partnership activities. Next slide, please. Those partnership activities are not only in Australia, but also worldwide. So I've recently come over from New Zealand, and I know that we've got partners in New Zealand that we work with in terms of industry experience and research experience. So we work with over 200 universities around the world and 200 research partners around the world. It could be in Asia, it could be in Europe, it could be in Africa, South America or North America. And we actually have campuses throughout the world. So we have a campus, for instance, in Vietnam, where we can allow our students to go and experience some of the Vietnamese culture. We have a campus in Barcelona in Spain, and until recently we've had field trips where some of our students and staff can go to Barcelona and experience European science careers and research. So we have the opportunity to allow you to go overseas and learn from those experiences with those universities and industrial partners. Next slide, please. And that's where we're talking about careers, because what we want to do is make you as employable as possible at the end of the course that you take. Now, some of the career outcomes that our students have after 3 or 4 years are in things like analytical laboratories or medical and research laboratories, or renewable energy organisations, chemical processing, government organisations. It could be in universities, it could be in research institutes, it could be in Australia or New Zealand or throughout the world. Really and truly, when you're doing a science degree, the world is your oyster. You can go anywhere if you want to have a job. And we will equip you with those skills necessary to take you into those type of employments. Next slide, please. So that is a very quick run through of our courses, our course structure. It also is a quick run through in terms of the type of teaching activities that you would participate on. Obviously, there'll be lectures, and hopefully from 2022, there'll be more face-to-face lectures that we'll be taking part in. But quite a lot of our teaching at this moment in time is delivered online. Now, these could be recorded lectorials or seminars. It could be seminars like this, where we have a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting and you're interacting with each other. We are hoping that we are going to have much more face-to-face laboratory experiences, but even so, we've got online laboratories that people can participate in, and different types of skills that we can develop through those. So we have the opportunity to create a very bright future, and I hope that you will come to RMIT and participate in some of our science degrees. So thank you for listening. I understand that you've been asking lots and lots of questions, and that's really, really good. Thank you very much. I will start to be answering some of the questions, and please forgive me if I ask these out of order, but I'll try to get through some of these questions, and please carry on asking those questions. So the first question I have is, can you do electives on non-science subjects in the degrees? And the simple answer is yes. We would love you to learn more holistically. Science is wonderful. Science is fantastic. Science is your future. Science is your career. But if you want to also underpin that with business or marketing, if you want to underpin that with philosophy or psychology, then that is really good. That's another string to your bow. It gives you a lot more employability options later on. So we have elective spaces where you can take non-science subjects in your degree. Sometimes there'll be constraints, so it's not always easy to pick the one that you want. But the easiest thing is when you come into RMIT to talk to your program managers and say, I would really like to develop this aspect. I want to be a marketer as well, or I want to be a IT specialist. And maybe we won't be able to grant all your wishes, but we'll certainly work very effectively with you to try to combine science and non-science electives with you. A second question. Are there ways for students to do a degree in science if they haven't got conventional VCE background? Yes, is the answer. There are ways. We do have a vocational education school in RMIT, and that runs associated degrees. So, for instance, you can have an applied science associated degree, which then would equip you with some of the science skills and some of the science knowledge that you would want. And then that fits into BSc in applied science or some other BScs. So you have a route to transfer directly in from the associate degree in the vocational education school into the BSc in the School of Science, for instance, in the STEM platform. And there are quite a few people that come through that. It's one of those unconventional type of pathways, but it's certainly a welcome pathway. And sometimes what we find is those students that come through that pathway have a deeper understanding of other aspects of education and therefore can get a better overall degree at the end of it. Can you stay on and do an honours degree at RMIT, and what are the advantages of doing honours? Yes, you can. You can stay on for as long as you want. You can stay on and do an honours degree, or you can stay on and do a master's, or you can stay on and do a PhD, and eventually you might want to stay on and become a lecturer and then hopefully a professor. There is no escaping sometimes from RMIT. So the advantages of that is that you actually deepen your understanding. Some of the skills that you have during a 3-year or 3.5 or a 4-year course need a little bit more honing in and deepening in terms of the applicability to some of the employability options that you'll get later on. So an honours degree, a Dean's Scholar degree or a master's degree, for instance, will give you more practical knowledge potentially, more experience of that experiential learning, of laboratory learning, of research learning. And that really helps you with that transition between theoretical knowledge to applied solutions. That's what makes you employable in the end. If you can apply what you learn in a university, whether it's RMIT or Melbourne or anywhere else, if you can apply that skills and that knowledge to a situation that an employee wants you to, then that creates you a great opportunity for a good career. And honours does offer you that opportunity, along with the Dean's Scholars route and along with going on to a postgraduate degree with us. I hope that the answers I'm giving you are suitable and you're finding them useful. Thank you for all the questions so far. I'm just looking for a few more, so excuse me for a moment. What courses will I do in the first year? Now that is a really good question. I don't know who asked that, but brownie points for you. It's a really interesting question in terms of what we're trying to do in the first year. And the first year is split into 2 semesters, semester 1 and semester 2. And in the first semester, what we're trying to do is give you a grounding of science in general. So we have courses in data and mathematical applications of data, statistical analysis, and it's called Data for a Scientific World. Then we have a course looking at biology and biological entities and chemistry, for instance, and that's the world of life sciences. And that gives you an understanding of how to apply chemistry and biology to the situations that you'll be coming into for your degree. We have a course called Physical Sciences in Action, where you're looking at geospatial, you're looking at physics, you're looking at astronomy and space science in some instances, and that's really important as well. You have a mathematical toolbox for scientists, so that's data analysis and statistics again, because a lot of it is interpreting data and understanding data. We have courses also in things like foundations in artificial intelligence, because we think that artificial intelligence and robotics is something that's going to be really important in the future. So we have a specific course about artificial intelligence and how to apply that in the industries that you're going to be going into. And we also have a course called Sustainable Development. And that really looks at sustainability from a global perspective. So climate change or the land, the governance of that land, and looking at how sustainability affects things such as chemistry, such as physics, such as business, such as banking. So those are really fundamental type of courses that we have. Understanding maths and stats, understanding the physics, understanding the chemistry and biology of a situation, understanding artificial intelligence and robotics, and understanding sustainability. So yeah, no, we have a lot of courses that you have as standard in the first year. And then we also have 2 or 3 electives, depending on what course you take, that you can tune in and hone in on your passion. So what are the opportunities for gaining work experience in industry during degree? There are quite a lot of activities there that really are focused in trying to translate industrial experiences for you to learn. So we value the hands-on experience, the applied experience that you gain. RMIT is Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. So we have technology in our name. We want our students to be competent enough to go out into industry and to work in industry from day one. And the only way that we can do that is by embedding these type of practical experiences in partnership with industry throughout the degree. And it could be through just experiments during a course, it could be case studies that you develop throughout a course or throughout the program, or it could be specific placements that you go out into an industry and you work alongside practitioners in that industry and develop skills in there. I think that's really important for students in terms of employability in the future. Do any of the programs offer the chance to do a research project? Yes, is the answer. Some of our programs offer you the opportunity to get involved in research projects, either in teamwork, and that's most commonly in teamwork, or individually. And certainly if you stay on to do an honours year or the Dean Scholar activity, or if you then stay on doing postgraduate education, you get the opportunity to get your hands dirty within the labs, and you get the hands dirty in terms of computational labs or physical labs or chemical labs or biology labs, or you can make food and even go into sensory analysis and start eating labs. We pride ourselves in terms of giving you those experiences. Now, COVID unfortunately has restricted our opportunities to some of those research opportunities. But we prioritise our final year students and our third year students in giving them an opportunity to do those type of activities, because those really create value in terms of cementing theoretical knowledge into applied solutions, and that's what we're about. So I hope that answers your question there. Can you explain more about what the Dean Scholar Programme involves? How is this different from other degrees? Now, that's a good question as well. There are some people on the chat behind me who might be able to answer that very specifically in terms of what you need to do to get into the Dean Scholar Programme and how it's different from other degrees. And I think I would really hope that my colleagues help me out here in doing that answer. But from my perspective, the Dean Scholar Programme involves you being truly a sort of academic approach to your learning, academic approach to your life here at RMIT. It's really designed for those students that are excelling, and how we can try to push them a little bit further in terms of accelerated performance, give you opportunities in terms of developing your wants and your passions and your needs for the future, and sometimes giving you research experiences so that you can come out with a slightly different set of skills in the end of it. The Dean Scholar Programme, many of the students that follow that programme actually go on to postgraduate education and go on to do a PhD here at RMIT, because they get so enthused about the research activities that we do and get involved in the laboratory experiences that they want to continue for the next 3 or 4 years and study to become a doctor. And then many of those then carry on and either stay at RMIT and become lecturers, or go out to industry and research partners such as CSIRO and work in industry and also research partners. So it's an interesting programme, and certainly well worth thinking about if you are academically minded and you really want to foster research and develop that research experience. What sort of careers do science students do? What sort of career do you want to do? One of the things that I tell many of my students is that university education is good. It gives you a background of, in this case, science, for instance. It gives you a background of biology, chemistry, physics, but it also teaches you how to think. And the facilitation of the pedagogical process of critical evaluation, critical analysis, understanding problems, problem solving is really important. The sort of careers science students can do, you can use that problem-based learning that I've been talking about to be applied in either laboratory careers, go out into government organisations, perhaps go into policy type of areas. If you've got a double degree with management or marketing, you could look at scientific marketing, and for instance, some of the food technology students go into food marketing or product development, product innovation. Some of them go into nutrition and look at biomedical science and also nutritional advice, all sorts of things. Also, will a science degree allow me to become a teacher? Well, yes and no. The science degree itself will not, but it will give you the backbone of science and science education. After the science degree that you've got, then you've got the opportunity to go and do a PG teaching degree. So for my sins, for instance, when I was a lecturer, I did a postgraduate certificate in teaching as well, and I found that really useful. So having that science background and having then a PG degree in teaching gives you a lot more confidence of how to approach students in a science environment when you go to school, or if you go into vocational education teaching as well. So yes, a science degree does allow you to become a teacher, but not straight off. These are really good questions. Thank you, everyone. I'm really excited by this. I'm really enjoying this. I hope you're enjoying it too. What are the benefits of doing double degree? Will this improve my employability options? Yes, it will improve your employability options, probably. And I say probably because really and truly, if you are a good student who likes problem-based learning, you will be employable. You are the employee, the potential employee, and it's up to you. But having a double degree gives you an opportunity to have skills that are outside of your main passion. So our son, I have 4 children, for instance, they've all gone through university, and our son, he did a double degree in politics and economics, finances. and he's now working for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in New Zealand. And he's used both his finance and sort of management type of experience alongside his policy work, because he's now a policy advisor for the New Zealand government. Our youngest daughter, she's still doing her degree in Victoria University in New Zealand, and she's doing a double degree in biomedical science and biotechnology, and she's looking to have a little bit more of an edge of understanding how biotechnology and biomedical science fit together to go into that sphere. And it gives you sort of the best of both worlds, an understanding of two different aspects, which will theoretically help you with greater employability options later on. I'm just looking for other questions. How has COVID affected teaching degrees? How are practical skills being taught? Gosh, these are really good questions. COVID has affected teaching. You would have seen it from your educational experiences so far. We try as hard as we can to give face-to-face learning experiences. Where face-to-face learning experiences are not allowed, we try to give tutorials and workshops like we're doing now. But you would have your cameras on and you'll be able to ask me questions directly. You'll be able to interact with each other on a peer-to-peer environment. We also provide online lectures, which could be recorded or they could be live lectures. And we provide online tutorials and online practicals. So where we can't do a practical face-to-face in the lab, we have software which we've developed that we can run different types of practicals online, and that's called Labstar. And we also have videos of different practical scenarios that we embed in our teaching environment so that you can pick up those at a pace that suits you. Now, there's a lot of debate sort of saying whether or not COVID and online delivery of teaching is good for degrees or bad for degrees. It really depends on how you use it. It allows you the opportunity to pace your learning experience at a speed that you're comfortable with. It gives you all the resources at hand that you can tap into and then go back and look at later on. And also it does give you that ability to have face-to-face interactions, even if they're via these type of screen activities. So I hope that helps you with that question. What sort of communication and team working skills are taught to prepare students moving into industry? Well, we have tried to do a lot of teamwork practicals, group work practicals, where there is problem-based learning outcomes. And that problem-based learning outcomes is really important when you are in a group of 3 or 4 or 5, excuse me, or maybe more. And that sort of helps you in terms of understanding what teamwork really is. So we talk a little bit about teamwork and team building. We also embed communication skills. So we help you in terms of data analysis, data retrieval, finding the information, the skills of writing that information into a report. And I don't mean necessarily just asking you to write an essay. I'm thinking here about writing a 150-word report or a précis, that sort of thing. Or even doing posters and doing PowerPoint presentations like I'm doing now. At the end of the day, you'll be much more proficient than I am talking to you. So, you know, all those skills and technologies are available to you, and we're trying to give you that experience because we do recognise that's really valuable in terms of employability and moving on to your next job. The main aim of us, when you come to RMIT, the main aim of us is to get you out of the door as quickly as possible with a degree and with a job at the end of it. And hopefully that's successful for the majority of people, because we really value your employability and we appreciate the time that you take in learning and coming to RMIT. Are any courses that involve fieldwork? Yes. A lot of our courses involve fieldwork in one form or the other. So, for instance, surveying. You can't become a registered surveyor or go down the surveying route without actually having practice in terms of surveying. In environmental science, you need to go and have a look at soils. You need to go and have a look at the landscape. You need to understand the waterways of Melbourne and beyond. You need to understand the governance and the importance of those in terms of our well-being. In bioscience and biotechnology, we take students to rivers. In some of our courses, we even take students to idyllic islands, and we have laboratory sessions for 3 or 4 days in those type of environments to give them an example of different types of environments. And it's that hands-on experience which is really important. In more of the technology side of things, perhaps is visiting laboratories or visiting industry itself, but we do certainly try to have field work as much as possible. Again, COVID has restricted those opportunities for the last 2 years, but even with those restrictions, we get out and about and we try to do as much as we can. Do all the science programs require the same level of high school maths? No, not really. In one of our courses, for instance, we allow students to come in who haven't necessarily done mathematical methods at prior educational learnings. We have, in the first semester of you coming here, a couple of courses that will give you a better understanding, a better grounding in maths and stats and data analysis. And we see that really important because we don't want you floundering in the next few years. So we want you to understand the applicability of mathematical sciences, and we bring you up to maths because maths is crucial in science. Without maths, it's very hard. But we understand that you coming into science and you potentially haven't got a mathematical background that other people have. So we would try to foster that understanding and bring you through that gently as possible. And we also give you support in tutorials if you need to. So there are great opportunities there to brush up on the mathematical skills or even develop a much deeper understanding of mathematics. Does RMIT students run any societies? Yes, they do. They run a load of societies. So we have societies in terms of physics, in food science, in maths, in biological sciences, environment. And that sounds boring because that means that when you go to a society, they're talking about maths and physics and science. But it's not actually, because they have fun things. So they have quiz nights, or they go out to the movies, or they go out and about. They even have debates with staff and talk about things. But there are other societies that are not discipline related, which are just as equally interesting, and that will give you an opportunity to have experiences in sports, for instance, football, and I mean Premier League football rather than Australian rules football, or cricket, or looking at debating, or looking at appreciation of wine or food or things like that. So there are lots and lots of student-run societies throughout RMIT, and you'll have that choice to pick those when you join us. Do science students have a chance to study computing? Yes, you do. You have an opportunity to study computing. In the first semester, we have a course called AI, Artificial Intelligence, as a STEM course, a science, technology and engineering and maths course. And the importance of computing is there across the whole of science and maths, understanding how computers function and how you can apply that technology and understanding to a whole range of situations. So you have an opportunity to take electives in terms of computing, but you also have inbuilt computing experiences. And certainly that AI, artificial intelligence course, right in the first few months that you come here at RMIT will be really interesting for you to use and take part in. Now I know that we've only got 5 more minutes of the session on, but I'll try to get through as many more of these questions as possible. What sort of careers do math students go into? Yes, that's a fundamental question, if ever I heard one. Data analysis, data understanding are certainly sort of some of the areas. Data mining, analytics, cybersecurity, fraud. We actually need in biological sciences a lot of students who do big data and bioinformatics, for instance. And you might have heard about bioinformatics, understanding mathematical modeling of biological systems. So then applying our knowledge to the mechanisms of physics or biology or chemistry into real life experiences and trying to then understand how that will fit into a mathematical model. So just because you have a degree in maths doesn't mean that you have to stay a mathematician for all your life. You can branch out into other disciplines in science and bring that experience through and educate people. I don't have mathematical experience necessarily. So if you come here to RMIT and you progress to a PhD and you do a PhD with me, you'll be teaching me maths. Don't worry about that. Next question. Are there opportunities to study overseas whilst doing a degree at RMIT? Yes, normally. And I'm hoping that post-COVID, we will be continuing that. So I mentioned that we had a campus in Vietnam. We had a campus in Barcelona, and there's been opportunities to go into European or Asian, even American universities, and New Zealand as well. And take a semester or even a year overseas abroad and get some experience of partnerships with those universities or partnerships with industry overseas as well. And I think if that opportunity presents itself to you, I would say take it, because that gives you a lot more general skills and makes you much more employable in the future. Which degree programs would you recommend if you're unsure of which program to join? Yes, sometimes you're in a bit of a quandary because you're not too sure whether or not physics is good or geospatial space science is good or maths or chemistry or biology. We have a course, a program called BP 229, and it's our science degree. And it's our main science program, and that gives you a choice to go into a science discipline, and you can have majors in there that you can specialize into chemistry or nanotechnology or biomedical science, physics, geospatial or maths or computational. So you have the opportunity to go and develop your passion after you've discovered whether or not it's something you want. So BP 229 gives you a semester of grounding of the science that we will be able to teach you, and then you can see what area of science really is passionate for you, what you really want to develop, and then you can choose which area you specialize in. So probably the BP 229 BSc Science is probably a good program to go into if you're a little bit uncertain about which area you really want to develop. Just looking at any other questions, but now I think I've reached 2 o'clock. And actually, potentially on that last question, I've reached an end of those questions. Hopefully, and I've seen in your question and answer session that there's lots and lots of questions and answers in terms of the subjects and the disciplines. If there are any other questions, please feel free to keep asking them. Contact our members of staff, contact me, and we will try our best to help you out in the future. Thank you very much for your time on the Sunday afternoon, and we also hope that you will come to RMIT. I want to welcome you here in February, March time, and I want you to be a successful RMIT student. So we are planning campus open days in October, and hopefully that will be face-to-face where you can actually see some of our facilities, but obviously that's lockdown permitting. I would just like to say thank you one more time and goodbye. Have a wonderful weekend and enjoy the rest of your life. Bye.